like senior portraits done for her son. And I actually see senior portraits as branding photography, just as long as the parents are willing to pay that price of branding photography. But she specifically asked me to really make sure that who he is shows up in the photos, right? And not to knock down like how people think of senior portraits, right? But she definitely didn't just want her son posing in front of a field when he had, when
Welcome back to Fearless Narrative, a show that's all about the incredible stories of women who are changing the game, breaking the rules, and pushing through the boundaries to face their fears head on because they are fearless entrepreneurs and creatives, and we love to see it. I am your host, Courtlyn Jones, and on our show, we go into a deep dive into captivating storytelling and engaging conversations with these incredible women as they share how they are pursuing their passions and shattering glass ceilings along the way. We love that so much. It's so inspiring and so empowering to share these stories with you. And hopefully it will empower you to embrace your own fearless path. Our show is all about feeling the fear and doing it anyway, as well as women supporting women. We love that. We need more of that always. So before we get started, don't forget to hit the button to subscribe to our show. We also would love a nice 5-star review at the end. Without further ado, let's go into a new episode right now. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back to Fearless Narratives. I am your host, Courtlyn Jones, and today our guest is the immensely talented Joi Conti, a Filipino-American professional photographer based in Austin, Texas. Joi's journey is a vivid narrative of visual vibrancy and the art of making everyone she works with feel seen and heard. She has honed her craft in various domains, specializing in editorial, elevated branding, and product photography. Through her work, Joi is on a mission to create visually captivating stories that resonate on a deep and emotional level. Joi, how are you?
I'm doing well, Courtlyn. How are you?
Fantastic, as always. Happy to talk to you.
Happy to chat with you too. I am so excited for this.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm dying to know about your background. So your journey as a photographer is very fascinating. Can you share the moments that led you to specialize in editorial, branding, and product photography?
Yeah, thanks so much for your kind words and for asking about this. I feel like I can trace that all the way back to, oh goodness, what year was that? Maybe that was 2005, 2006, somewhere around there when DeviantArt was really popular. And I think it was like DeviantArt and Neopets competing for the space on the internet. And I remember getting really inspired by these photos that I would see in DeviantArt, not realizing that they were highly like photo manipulated images. And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but what that did get me to start thinking about is storytelling through photos, different imagery that or different symbolism that you can put in a photo. So when people are just looking at this photo, within 2 seconds, they can start creating a story in their head, maybe have an idea of who the subject or who the person is, because the images that I was looking at were definitely more leaning towards the fantastical and the fairy tale, which I really loved. And so I think that's how I started looking at photography schools. So as soon as I graduated high school, I went to a photography school called the Rochester Institute of Technology and decided to get my BFA there. And that's where I got to learn more about product photography and the technical skills that I needed to work with product photography. So being able to mix product photography and the people work that got me interested in photography, I think just pointed directly to wanting to do editorial. And to me, branding seems like a pretty new marketing term because in my head, or at least when I was learning, about photography in school, that's more of a mixture of like lifestyle and commercial.
Mhm.
Um, and so I guess just everything that I learned combined just pointed to what I'm doing now. So yeah, I mean, it led from just being interested in art that people have made to share and post online, to going to school and then working for a fashion editorial still life photographer when I was back in New York, and other photographers to just lead me to where I am now.
I love that. But I do want to ask you a question about your art school.
Yeah.
I went to art school too, and I've been creative my whole life. But did you have a good experience in art school?
Oh my God, I love that. I did not know that about you, and I want to know more. I feel like I think I did. Um, I feel really grateful that I found a group of just really creative people that wanted to do things that I wanted to do. Because I mean, I don't know about the rest of the photo kids that I went to school with, but I know they had their own kind of interests as to why they wanted to get into photography. But I always branched out and became really good friends with illustrators, became really good friends with people who were in the film in film school and other schools outside of photography, and just basically anybody who wanted to talk about like just stories and fairy tales I was with. People that loved like cartoons and just I don't know, just because I guess I've always leaned towards cartoons and illustrations as well, because anything can happen, right? Like people could be floating, like someone's arm can turn into a seashell. Like there's just so many so many um aspects about just like things that aren't quite grounded in reality, but still you can still kind of see how it is tied into reality. That's just those are the people that I ended up flocking to. So yeah, I think I did have a pretty good experience. Yeah.
That's
Can
good.
I
That's
ask you
amazing.
how yeah, can I ask you what your experience was?
My experience was not that great. That's why I asked you, because I also had one of my friends from a different school though for college, but me and her met in high school, which is why we knew we were friends. But her experience was also probably worse than mine. Hers, like she actually had a breakdown, like an emotional breakdown where she had to like drop out of school because of how intense her experience was. For me,
Ooh.
I loved being in art school because, to say that I was in art school and to have my whole life building up to it as a child, to, want to pursue art and go to FIT, which is where I went to in New York City. But it was more of like the loneliest experience I've had. It was very competitive. Most of the kids or the students were in dorms, and I was a commuter. So they all had like, their closer friendships where I was kind of the outsider, and I could feel that all the time. So that was kind of tough to deal with, but also the assignments were insane. And that caused me a lot of pressure, obviously, to be felt. And my professors were also, there were a few that were really pervy. So that was gross.
That's a
So
problem.
yeah, there's a lot happening. Like one actually uh told me during my presentation that I had a sexy voice in front of the whole class. And I'm just like, I'm done. I'm just gonna take my seat now because ew. And it just made the whole experience really creepy. But he also like did other things that I'm not gonna get into. But so my experience wasn't always fun. And I was happy that I managed to survive it. I still love art, but art school almost killed it for me, to be honest.
I'm so sorry. I hear you about the commuting versus people in the dormitory, because I did have a friend who didn't really start making friends till like sophomore year because he was commuting his freshman year.
Mhm.
Um, and it was a pretty big art program. And but looking at his work and still looking at his work. He's one of the most inspirational people that I've went to school with, and I think that's what I really loved about it, was that I like, of course, there were people that I didn't get along with, but the school was big enough for me to be like, okay, thanks, and then like go to
Love
my
it.
group. Yeah, and avoid the people who well, I'm really sorry about the instructors who were not great, because that's uncomfortable. You're like putting all your trust into somebody to guide you, and they say
Hmm.
things like that, and you're like, no.
Nope. Hard pass.
Mm.
Time to run away. Yeah.
Oh God, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I survived it. It's all good. Okay.
Okay, okay.
All right. So your goal is to make everyone you work with feel seen and heard. Can you elaborate on how you achieve this through your photography and what it means to create that connection?
Yeah, I tell people at the very beginning, even before we say, okay, we're gonna meet at this location, shoot on this date, before I even show up with my gear, I take them through what I like to call a creative direction meeting.
Mhm.
It usually lasts for an hour. And this is where I get to really ask them, like, hey, so what are your hopes and dreams? what are those what are those castles in the sky that you want to achieve, so we can build that ladder together and I can get you up there. And sometimes it's so funny whenever I'm talking to people after the hour has passed, they're always telling me like, "Oh, I didn't realize that I had so much to tell and talk to you about it." It's like, yeah, sometimes you just need like these activation questions, like guided activation questions, to really get you there, right? Sometimes they don't even realize that 60 minutes has have passed, and I always remind them, okay, we're at the 30-minute mark, so we need to do this, and this as well. Um, and as much as I want to say that I have set questions, like, yeah, I do have guidelines, but sometimes it just goes into a different tangent, but still related to what we want to do. Because during that creative direction meeting call, we actually find out that they want to do something more, or they're just so game to being more creative. Um, and that's really how I try to get them to feel seen and heard. Maybe they just needed the space, or someone to go, hey, you can be creative, or like, hey, you can say whatever you want, it's okay. Like, say, this hour is like pretty, it's a safe space, it's not going anywhere else. I'm just trying to get as much information as I can, even though they just kind of feel like really frou-frou things in the sky, just because it's going to help me kind of go, oh, you actually like this, and this, without asking you too many like technical questions. Um, because I think that's how people get turned off a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Like all these technical questions. I also guide people through creating a mood board. I feel like because you went to art school, you know what a mood board is. A lot of
Mhm.
people go, "What do you mean by a mood board?" I'm like, "Oh, it's just I mean, if you have Pinterest, we work on Pinterest." But it's just a bunch of images really that you kind of look at it and go, huh, this feels great, or this makes me feel great. I'm not sure why. And I'm like, yeah, put it on the board, or give that to
Yeah.
me, and then we can put it on a board, because that really does inform me about their style, maybe the kind of lighting that they prefer, the way that they prefer, maybe like the retouching, especially now where film has come back into people's what do you call that, everyday kind of language,
Mhm.
wanting that film kind of look. That's also something that I like to know, because then it'll help me throughout the entire process of when I shoot and even after I shoot.
I love doing mood boards. I actually did the best project ever for my old job years ago, and I loved it. And it was based off of doing mood boards for the Pantone color of the year at the time. I think it was like a coral color. And I created so many mood boards on Pinterest that helped me to build these like giant mood boards for the project. Because like the whole assignment was the client wanted actual like boards that express the color and how it was used and whatever. So like I wanted to create the actual mood boards that made everyone just feel like happy and just feel, like bright, because coral is a bright color. It's a happy color. And I loved how it came out, and it was such a great, fun project. And what killed me is that they canceled the project when I was done with it. So I finished it and it
What?
was amazing and I loved it and then they threw it away. And I cried for like a week. But I'm telling you, after that is when I decided I'm going to quit this job because I was so pissed off. But doing those boards and having that vision play it out and having it did come to life and I was so proud of it. So I was happy that I got it done. But man, that killed me. To this day, I'm still mad.
Do you still have your coral mood board? Does it exist somewhere?
The boards are gone in the garbage, but I have the actual like files. So I still have my mood boards. They came out so beautiful. I will probably show it to you now because I want to show it to you later. But man,
Oh, well, if you ever want to collaborate, let me know because I'm always into
yeah.
that. Like I was the other day, I was thinking about the color periwinkle and
Mm,
how, for whatever reason, and maybe this is just me and not knowing people who are very precise about their colors, no one knows what periwinkle is. And I'm like,
it,
it would be interesting to do a shoot around that because no one knows what
mhm.
periwinkle is.
It's like a light grayish bluish color. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but it's almost I want to say that it
purple.
can fall under purple, right?
Yeah.
And then people go, I don't think so, and I'm like, are we debating about periwinkle? Because we can. But yeah,
Oh,
I love that. I would love to see that mood board. Oh my goodness.
hopefully you'll appreciate it because you're also a creative, but also you also have a heart. And these people apparently did not.
Oh my
Anyway,
god.
moving on. Okay. Editorial photography often requires capturing raw and authentic moments. Can you share an experience where you had to create or capture a particularly candid and impactful moment?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of one specific. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go with recently. I guess she's an acquaintance of mine. We met through a networking event. And what I love is that I'm actually meeting more and more moms who are like this, which is great. She wanted like senior portraits done for her son. And I actually see senior portraits as branding photography, just as long as the parents are willing to pay that price of branding photography. But she specifically asked me to really make sure that who he is shows up in the photos, right? And not to knock down like how people think of senior portraits, right? But she definitely didn't just want her son posing in front of a field when he had when he has nothing to do with the field,
Yeah.
right? And just smiling. And so I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I told her, I was like, is would it be okay if we all hop on a Zoom call, just so I can talk to your son? You can be there, and I can just guide you both through some questions. And later on, I find out that he really, really loved the movie. Everything Everywhere All at Once, that really famous movie that came out in 2022. But anyway, I so he was like, okay, yeah, I really like that movie, can we do a bagel shot? And I'm like, okay, yeah, we can do a bagel shot. And so we specifically looked for a location in Austin that could lend to him doing that specific pose and shot. um and I think he had fun throughout the entire shoot, because that's the other thing too with senior portraits, like high schoolers. I don't know. I heard from a lot of moms that it's really hard for their high schoolers to smile in a photo, probably because they're just, they're always, the family's always asking them to smile, always with the camera. Like, I get it. That's what my mom did all the time. And I grew up emo and goth. So, that there's a challenge right there.
Yeah.
And and so I was able to genuinely capture him smiling and just enjoying himself, even though he was a little maybe like awkward at the beginning, probably because I just really asked him, like, hey, what do you want to do? Like, this is your shoot. I'm not going to ask you to pose a certain way, especially if it doesn't feel authentic to you. I want to do, like, let's do all the fun stuff you want to do. Oh, you don't like staying still? Okay, well, we'll make you jump around. Like, I even gave him some scenarios too where I think I even said I was like photographing on the ground, and I was like, oh, would you be okay to jump or like, move around? He's like, yeah, I like moving. And I was like, okay, so just pretend like you're about to jump like where the wild things are. And so we caught a couple of shots where he's just jumping and he's authentically laughing. And I realized that that's kind of where my default always goes. Obviously, if the assignment is a bit more like serious and the person needs to cry, not that I've had that assignment recently, um, I'll always get them to just laugh because it also breaks the tension.
Mhm.
And once that tension is broken, everything just feels very effortless. And when things feel effortless for them, that shows up on the camera like so fast and quicker than me trying to like pull a smile out of somebody just because they are just naturally laughing. Um, but I don't know. I tend to default to that a lot. The last time that somebody asked me to do a sad portrait was like in like 2021. So it's I'm on a good track of getting people to smile.
Good. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I think that an important part of a photo shoot is obviously having a good photographer who makes you feel comfortable. And I have done a few little modeling shoots. I'm not a model. I will not say I'm a model, but I've done a few little shoots. And I'm an awkward person. So when I do these shoots, I always feel uncomfortable. But when I have a good photographer who makes me feel like I'm okay and I'm safe in this space and that I can be silly and not have to be like don't have to feel, so uptight or like tense because I'm like, not feeling my best because I'm in a weird spot where I don't feel like I belong here at times. So when I have a good photographer like you, for example, to help me, have that tension loosen up, I think it really makes a difference in how the photos come out for sure.
Yeah, and thank you. Sometimes I also just tell people like we're having a conversation. I just happen to have this large piece of equipment in front of me.
In front
um,
of our faces, yes.
yeah, in front of our faces. So every once in a while too, I will like take my head over just so they can just see me and I just start laughing. And that was the other thing too with laughter is sometimes I'll just start cracking up and not because I've like lost my marbles, but it's mostly because I I will try to just get them to laugh to just like if I just start laughing. I remember this now that we're talking about it. There's this one um article that I read about laughing yoga. Not that I've ever been to one, but it seems really funny where everyone's just laughing for a good like solid 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh, you'd probably walk out of that well, A, exhausted, maybe your cheeks are a little tired, but
Yeah.
also you're probably feeling all sorts of good afterwards.
Mhm.
It's like happy, cathartic kind of exercise.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with how laughter is the best medicine. I know that when I've had a bad week so far, and talking now to you and laughing right now feels really good. I gotta tell you.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Okay, great.
Okay. So elevated branding photography is about showcasing products in a captivating light. What techniques or creative approaches do you use to make products stand out in a crowded visual landscape?
Yeah, I think when it comes to product photography, I always tell people that less is more.
Mhm.
And when I say less is more, that doesn't mean that I um uh don't go for the vignettes, the beautiful vignettes that people have. But when you start styling like a product shoot, you always start with the main thing that you're shooting and then you build from there because everything outside of what the subject is should complement the subject and not overpower it because sometimes I see um, some shoots where maybe they are trying to go for the effortless, like I just threw, like my bag just fell over and then things came out of my bag. Like that's a pretty popular editorial product scenario. But even if something does fall out of your bag, there always has to be a focus as to why we're shooting that way. And so I always try to make sure that whatever product we're shooting is front and center, and then everything either kind of leans towards it with the way that the props um, maybe fall behind it, maybe leaning towards it. Um, and also just not, and to even think about scale. it always depends on the story of how they want the product to be felt by whoever ends up purchasing the product. So that's the other aspect to it too. Um, but yeah, I always start from simple and then build from there because sometimes it gets a little too, it's too much when there's like a lot to work with, and then you're like, here's my products, like this much landscape, and your product's like, I don't know, like a 16th or less of a 16th of the entire picture. But again, it always depends on what you're trying to say and what you're trying to do with that image. um I remember in school they would always talk about the hero shot, and we were doing, I think they were talking about like photographing an iron, an iron which is pretty mundane. How do you turn that into a hero, right? That might mean changing the angle of how you're photographing it, and maybe and definitely paying attention to the light, because depending on how your iron looks, it's very reflective. So
Right.
there's that.
Definitely. I love how you mentioned how models, how some shoots they have like an effortless look to them, where I don't know if you saw the trend that's like all over the internet right now, and all the Zara all the Zara models are just like doing these crazy poses and just like random things. And I thought it was a joke until I went online to the actual Zara web. I haven't been on site in years. I went to it and I'm like, oh wow, this is actually like spot on. Like they have like these effortless, like, well, these, I don't know if effortless, these like really like kind of blurry photos or like pulling goats or some shit where you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I've seen those and they make me laugh so hard. Especially I remember seeing one where, okay, pose like a Zara model, and someone just like shoves their friend to the ground, and the friend's like smiling or whatever it is, and then the person's like right over the other person, and I'm like, is this okay? Yeah, I mean, like, I suppose this could be like an avant-garde kind of like shoot, where I'm like, the last time I saw this happening was when I was photographing like dancers, but they were like taking turns with the pushing and the shoving, and it was like a dance. you know if that's what they're going for, I'm game.
Everyone has their own vision for, I guess, what they're creating. So have at
Yep, yep.
it. So Austin is known for its vibrant creative scene. How has the city influenced your work and your approach to photography?
I Thanks for asking this, because I think this is one of the reasons why my husband and I moved to Austin. Um, at the time we were living in the Bay Area. This was 2020,
Mhm.
and we just took a look around. We didn't really want to live in our tiny little apartment that was kind of growing mold on the side. And we were like, yeah, we're ready to,
Yeah, time to move.
yeah, time to move. And I think at the time I knew I wanted something different, but I couldn't put point my finger or like put my finger on it exactly.
Mhm.
And Austin was the answer. I just remember visiting Austin probably like a few years prior to that, and I just remember feeling good in the city. And that's what I always flock to, right? Is a place that'll make me feel good, because once and this is what happens all the time, once I feel good, I feel like I can express myself more. I feel I can branch out more. And I feel like with the city and moving here, I've felt a sense of community that um, I've never felt before. And I don't know if it's the friendliness or the need to not dodge cars when you're crossing the road. I'm not sure. That is exciting when you need to walk like, 10 blocks up. You need to just like pace yourself a little bit faster. But I just feel like um going to all the networking events that I went to and meeting people, they were just so warm and inviting and just kind of welcomed me like with I don't know. It really is just the vibes, the creative vibes here, and just people being able to share their work and their art so easily, that inspired me to go full time with my photography. Um, and I think the other thing that inspired me about Austin, and getting more contacts and also just learning more about people, in this community is that we have a lot of markets that pop up. Like there's a market in a coffee shop, especially when the weather's nice, right? And even though right now it's like 50 degrees or 40 degrees, which I guess is cold for Austin, um, there's still outdoor markets that pop up at outside of a coffee shop, outside of like a Tom's Shoes down in South Congress. Like it's amazing how many like small businesses that you end up meeting by just walking out and about, or you decide to have like brunch with people, and then there's just a small market that's outside and it's always thriving. And so that's what I love about it. It's just it's I find it really easy to talk to people here. And I love that. Growing up in Queens, and the Philippines, but growing up in Queens, like I feel like there was a lot of stranger danger. You know, you just don't really talk to people that easily,
Yeah.
or right, maybe if it's not stranger danger, it's more of like you're thinking about a million different things, trying to hop on the next train just so you can get to where you're going. So that's kind of what's going on in your head. Over here, like I feel like I can talk to anybody who's like waiting for like a coffee next to me or like a juice. Not that I do, but sometimes if someone just comments like, "Hey, yeah, like that's a great bag," you know, we just start talking about the bag, where we go to shop. But it's never as creepy that it'll just like follow afterwards. It always just kind of ends there. But it's just like a nice little like tidbit to your day, just to be able to say, you know, hello, or just make a connection with somebody. So I feel like that to me was so encouraging to be like, yeah, I can do this.
Oh, I love
being
that.
being the sensitive artist that I am, you know, it really is very uplifting when you can just connect with people so easily.
That's beautiful. I definitely will say that I live in Brooklyn, New York, so I know that it's not as, as you're saying, it's not as like friendly. Well, it's friendly, but it's not like, as you said, there's a stranger danger for sure. Like you don't want to talk to someone who's gonna like be aggressive or something, or like, mean for no reason. So I think it's really rare to have those moments where you can find somebody next to you who's like willing to talk to you and like in a pleasant way. So that's really amazing that Austin has that for you. So I'm happy for you.
Oh, thank you.
So lighting is crucial in photography, obviously. Can you share some tips or insights into how you use lighting to create the desired mood and atmosphere in your photos?
Yeah, I think lighting is definitely key. I should have looked this up before we started talking, but I'm pretty sure that the direct translation of photography is being able to like pick up light and what the light sees. And depending on what the light is, it can always give off a certain mood or feeling. Like if you're going for a little bit more quiet and a little bit more maybe reserved, um, I don't know why I started thinking about college, but a lot of people used window light, especially just, you know, the light streaming through the window, someone maybe looking off in the distance. And window light is really beautiful. You can use more than, you know, trying to look quiet and introspective, you know, beyond that, the window light idea. But if you are trying to go for more, I don't know, like if you're shooting a product more energetic and colorful, like an open kind of source of lighting is always great to make sure that the colors pop out, you see everything. um so yeah, the lighting will always help tell the story of what's going on and set the mood, and it'll also affect the way that the color comes through with whatever you're photographing, products, whatever the person would be wearing. Because if you are trying to go for vibrant, it will always be like a big bright source versus something a little bit more muted, which will probably be more like bouncing the light or filtered light through a window. Um, yeah, I mean, I just think that I would want to say that I always have a go-to kind of lighting scenario, but I always think of big, bright, open sources for products. And then with people, it always depends, because sometimes if I'm not working with strobes, professional photography strobes, and we're working with daylight, I wouldn't put like a group of people I wouldn't be shooting them, I wouldn't be photographing them like in the middle of the day at high noon because I want to make sure that I see everybody's faces, unless the story is a little bit more sharp where you need sharper shadows. But
Mm.
I probably will not photograph them at around noon or 1 or 3. Like I'm also somebody who's like, okay, can you wake up at 7 in the morning? Do you want to do you want to shoot then? Because a lot of people tend to forget that we have two golden hours. One is like early in the morning, as soon as the sun rises, and the other is obviously when the sun sets. And of course, there is a, I think when the sun sets will be a little bit more like warm. But I love the early morning because A, you don't have a lot of people in your background depending on where
Mhm.
you are. And B, just everything is just so quiet you can think.
Yeah.
And sure, people are kind of groggy too, especially early in the morning, but it's also good time of day if you're photographing something a little bit more, I was going to say, I don't know why mystical came to mind, but maybe a little bit more like magical, mystical, but also just more subdued, versus the energy of the afternoon, where I think that's, yeah, if you want a little bit more vibrancy and warmth or just like energy, I think it would be later in the afternoon. But I'm always more of like, let's photograph in the morning just to get it over with, but also, and I mean that in a good way, right? They don't have to think about it. Um,
Mhm.
that's also why I tend to shoot. I also tend to have people photograph early on, so they're not thinking about it throughout the day, because I know people get nervous during photo shoots, and I'm like, let's just,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. So let's just get that done for you, so you check it off your list. You don't have to think about it again.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't realize there was a morning golden hour either. So that's thanks for telling me that.
Yeah, yeah, it's wonderful. The fact that we get two in a day is great.
Right? Because I'm always sleeping. So I can't I always really miss that hour because I'm like knocked out until like, I don't know, past probably well past the time that the golden hour is gone. All right. So the creative process varies for every photographer. What rituals or routines do you follow to get into the zone and find inspiration for your work?
Yeah, I think for me, I had a coach who taught me how to manage my energy through um, journaling. And even the day of the photo shoot, and if I'm feeling a certain way, maybe I'm nervous or a little anxious about whatever it is, I just write it out. And I write it out in the way that she taught me how to write it out, because I feel like once it's written, right, and no one needs to see what I've written, and it's never anything bad. It's more of just being able to take out all the feelings that I have and put it somewhere.
Mhm.
Um, has always been helpful, so I can actually like focus and do the work and focus on who I'm working with. Because at least for me, I've noticed that when I'm photographing to creatively serve. Like, yes, I'm always going to have my take on things, and the way that I photograph and see things and retouch things will always be from me. But in order to get the authentic moments, in order for people to feel comfortable, I always have to be emotionally and visually aware of what's going on in front of me when I'm working with somebody. And it's almost like needing that hyper focused focusedness, is that a word?
I don't know.
Just, yeah, just being hyper focused with who I'm working with, to make sure that, like we were talking about, being comfortable, just so they can really show up during the photo shoot as their authentic selves, but also being able to read the room too.
Mhm.
And I can't do all of that if I'm feeling a certain way, because that ends up like being filters over what I'm trying to see, what I'm trying to feel. So I think that has been a ritual for me. If I am feeling a certain way, or even if I am excited about something, I'm like, yeah, I'm excited. Like I'll write that, I'll write that down. But again, it's all in private. Um, and it's not something that I kind of look back at. It's not necessarily a diary entry either, unless I just decide to start making like a to-do list as I'm as I'm journaling, then it becomes something a little bit more something that I need to look back at. But
Right.
yeah, I want to say that that's one of the rituals for sure.
So that's great. And I love that because I feel like not everyone realizes that their energy can affect the energy of other people. So to make sure that you're okay first, and then so that your client is also feeling okay, that's amazing. So good for you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
As a photographer, how do you balance preserving the authenticity of your subjects while also adding your unique artistic touch to each image?
Yeah, I think I feel like I've always been drawn and into collaboration ever since I started um actually since I went to school. I've noticed that being able to listen to what people want, but also their opinions on certain things when we've both signed on that yes, we're going to work together, has always helped me because it's just a way to build an idea for whatever project we're working on. Like yes, somebody will come to me and go, hey, I need this done for my candle company. I want this photographed. Um, and I want it to look great. And I'm like, okay, well, what does great mean? Right. And this kind of points back to the creative direction meeting where we talk about what they like and what they don't like. Sometimes with what I was talking about with the candles, I try to see and push where else we can, I don't know, make their product shine by either adding a splash of color or maybe even adding hands to the shot to see if that can help not elevate the candle, but just make the candle shine even more, but also placing the object in someone's hand puts things to scale, but also it seems more personal, right? And so I think I always bring up these ideas to my clients to see if they like where we're going. And I usually know that they like the idea when they go, oh, and we can do this. Like it's always the
Mhm.
oh and
Yeah.
I or it's the or we can do this, right? It's always like on an upward projection as to see where and how we can go about it. um and so I think that's how I try to maintain that balance is okay, well, you need this done, okay, how what else can we add to it to make this feel more like you and to make it more human, right, if we're talking about products. um and the spin on maybe like photographing branding portraits for people. um I like being on location. I'm more of an on location photographer. I mean, I can absolutely shoot in a studio and work the studio lights, but the location can always lend to the story as well. So that's where a bit of me kind of comes in too, where I go, well, okay, what do you want to do? They'll tell me like, well, I really like bright colors. I really like doing this. Then we'll find a location somewhere in Austin where we can do that. And I've been very, very lucky, where I will just reach out to, if it's not outdoors and it's not on a sidewalk, I'll reach out to certain businesses in Austin and just be very transparent with them and go, hey, I'm doing this for somebody. It's not a commercial shoot. It's for their own kind of like portrait session that they want. Can we photograph in there for like 10-20 minutes? They'll usually say, oh yeah, that's okay, because I think they just like knowing, right, that that's going to happen, and we're not just like walking in and photographing without their knowledge. But I think that's where a bit of me kind of comes in, where I'm like, okay, well, let's turn this more into a location shoot, or this, adding this background can absolutely add to your story, which, I always lean towards the colorful. So that's why that's how I just kind of balance both.
I think it's so beautiful whenever creatives can incorporate part of their personality into their work, even though it's not them as the main subject of the piece. But I just think that we all kind of do that thing, not always intentionally, just kind of happens because as the artist behind the camera or behind the paintbrush or computer, we always we always feel, I think, connected to our pieces. And I think that like when you can see the artist in the piece, I think it just adds extra like part of it that's special. I really, really love that.
Yeah, and I also feel that having that connection of being able to add yourself to the piece, or seeing a bit of yourself in the piece makes you more what is the word that I'm looking for? It is connection, but also I think it keeps you going as an artist, right? I mean, of course, there are pieces that as artists will make because it's a reflection of self, or it just comes from us and it needs to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, or else it'll drive us crazy if it doesn't get
Yep.
produced, right?
So, or
Um,
gets thrown out.
or
Just
thrown
saying.
out. Oh God, I think that project needs to get revived. um, but I think it's more like it gives you the juice or the energy or the inspiration to just keep going within your own art form, really. So it's like it's a two-way street, right? It's like
Yeah,
you are giving a bit of yourself to your client, but in a way, especially if it connects to you and relates to you, it is also giving you the boost to be who you are and to be able
yeah,
to do what you really want to do. So I
definitely.
yeah.
Okay, so bonus question, which I love. Can you tell me the last time that you felt fearless? A time when you were afraid, but you did it anyway, and then how did it come out?
Ooh, I feel like I can point to one of the earlier networking events that I've been to here in Austin that led to so many opportunities for me, and not in the way of like, okay, like the next day someone's paying me to paying me to photograph. But I remember that day, I'm not really sure why I was upset. I think there was an email that came in and it just wasn't a great email. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
Um, and I was just really upset about that because I definitely took it personally, um, with whatever was said in the email. And I just remember not feeling so great that entire day. I knew that I signed up for this networking event, and I was so close to just not even showing up. But I was like, you know what? You signed up. You haven't gone to a networking event in a while. Just do it. Drove there, couldn't find the place. It's like, what in the world? And so I just decided to park, just made sure that my doors were locked.
Yeah.
But I was in the parking lot, took a couple deep breaths, and then I called my husband and was like, I cannot find this place. I took a screenshot of the Eventbrite invite, and I was like, I've been plugging this into my Maps app, my Google Apps map, whatever it's called, and please, can you just help me because I am not finding this place. Apparently, and like even Google was confused. Like it was trying to it was trying to take me to like a different location altogether, but it wasn't so far from where it was. And so he was on his desktop and he was just telling me, okay, turn here, turn here. I eventually found it. Like, yes, I was late, but I showed up and I got to connect with a lot of people that to this day I'm still friends with because we just keep bumping into each other at networking events.
Love that.
Yeah, yeah. But also I made a deeper connection there with the person who was running the networking event, who has helped promote my work more and just has helped me kind of reach more people. But also, the people that I met there, I also follow their journeys now and where they are now. It's just so inspirational to just be able to go, oh my gosh, well, you're having this event. I'd love to go. So that night was pretty. I really remember. I just wanted to go home and cry. Like,
Oh no.
I was like, you know what? Like today just doesn't feel like my day, but it was so worth it to just keep pulling through and keep finding different ways just to get there, even though physically and emotionally, like I was really, really not, it's really just like pulling a really, really heavy sled just to get to where I needed to go. But yeah, I'm very grateful that that panned out. Yeah, it's that's and sometimes too when I do feel like that with a task, I just remind myself of that specific scenario that eventually things will pay off. The feeling of like wanting to just give up and cry will subside. And that's not to say that I'm going to ignore those feelings. I'm going to meet those feelings right then and there, but also to know that it's okay to keep pushing through. And also know that sometimes I do just have to like maybe close my laptop and then walk away for a little bit, maybe take in the sun and look at nature for a little bit and then come back and then maybe do it again and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it all ended up being a better experience for you, because I know how those tough days can really affect your mood for, longer than we like for it to. But I'm glad you made it through and you got there safely and got home safely, which is an important part, and you had a good time and good experience through that. So good for you for pushing through that.
Oh, thank you.
To end our show, looking ahead, what aspirations and creative goals do you hold for your photography? And how do you envision evolving your storytelling through visuals?
Yeah, looking ahead, I think I want to show my work more in the community galleries that we have here in Austin. I recently, I guess it's self-published, a small magazine or a guide. Really, we were calling it a guide, but it is a 40-page magazine called Tayo Na, which means let's go. And it focuses on Austin Filipino artists and makers. Um, and what I really loved about it was that it tells a story about a couple of artists that I found through all these networking events and the scenario that I mentioned where I just really wanted to give up, but I was really happy that I showed up. I met one of the people who basically helped me find the rest of the people within this guide. And being able to maybe do a second book next year, second magazine, highlighting different awesome Filipino artists and makers would be great. This was published back in October, and so I'm probably going to do the same thing because it's, I think, Filipino-American History Month. Um, and so I'm probably going to do that again, but I'm already thinking about how that's going to work out, already thinking about finding sponsorships and maybe adding ads to the magazine to just help fund that. Um, but yeah, I think that's more public art displays, I suppose, is what that points to. And I think the reason why I want to do more of that is somewhere along the way, and I don't really think someone ever told me this, and I don't even know how it just settled its way into my mind. I have been thinking for a very long time that my work isn't really gallery worthy. Like it's a little too commercial or a little too kitschy or whatever my itty bitty shitty committee decides to tell me in my head, right? Like, and so I just decided to be like, you know what? Like, I'm not really sure how this is the truth or where this even came from, but I'm just gonna try anyway. Like, I'm in a different headspace, and I'm in a community that just really loves just having art galleries. Like, why not? Um, and so I think that's what I'm looking at towards the future. More definitely more collaborations with people, because that's another thing that I love is being able to collaborate with illustrators or anybody else within the art space to create something. Um, yeah, those, yeah. So I think more collaborations, more just showing up in terms of print work and networking for sure. And also just being able to show up even when it's scary and even though I want to cry and maybe even throw up a bit. Maybe that's usually a good sign that I should show up.
That's disgusting. Okay. But I'm really excited for you, and I'm so proud of you always. So lastly, how can our audience find you?
Yeah, you can find me through my website and my Instagram. My website is joiconti.com, joiconti.com. And my Instagram handle, which I'm hoping I'm remembering correctly, is joi.conti. That's joy.conti on Instagram. Those are the best two ways to see what I'm up to, and to also just connect with me as well. And also, I'm always willing to talk through email. So if it's okay to give my email address, it's joy@joiconti.com. That's JOI at JOICONTI.com.
Thank you, Joi, for joining me today. You have been so fun and so funny, and I had the best time talking to you today.
Thank you so much, Courtlyn. I really appreciate this opportunity, and it was so wonderful to connect with you. And yeah, let's talk more, and let's create more.
Yes. Okay, bye.
Bye.
And that is a wrap. Fearless Narratives airs every Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday. Thank you for joining us today. You have been an amazing audience, and we really love your support. So we also would love for you to give us a nice 5-star review. And until next time, stay fearless.